Pokemon Platinum is a game beloved by many Pokemon fans, myself included. For the Sinnoh region, Game Freak created a world with unique Pokemon, a compelling story, and different terrains that are all very good and don't make me want to gouge my eyeballs out. But I've played Pokemon Platinum 100 times. I want to try something new. What if I play the game with the sole intention of making as much money as possible? I don't care about becoming the champion or catching all the Pokemon, unless it's profitable for me to do so. Join me in my ridiculous quest through Sinnoh as I push the game to its absolute limit, where every quirk of the game is exploited, all in the name of maximizing profit. How much money can you make in Pokemon Platinum? Let's find out. We begin as every Pokemon game begins, in the bedroom of our mother's house, no father to be seen, and a rival who ranges somewhere between wet blanket and wanted criminal. Platinum gives us Barry, the most frantic boy on Earth, with an additional threat for this challenge, specifically monetary threats. In Pokemon games, money really only exists to aid you in your primary quest, allowing you to buy items that help you become the Pokemon champion. But we're gonna flip this on its head, making the accumulation of money our primary goal. My only consideration in every decision I make is how much profit I can generate from that. The first decision I need to make is which starter Pokemon to select. Although picking all 3 Pokemon are free now, I need to consider what each of them can do for me later. It's very possible that their capabilities have financial repercussions later in the run. In this case, all 3 Pokemon do the exact same things, so there's not actually a correct choice here. I decide to go with Piplup, not like I'm biased or anything. In Pokemon, money can be made in 2 ways: defeating trainers to collect cash as a reward, and picking up and selling items. I want to note that you can abuse these methods to essentially generate infinite money. Things like using the Versus Seeker to fight the same trainers over and over, or endlessly generating daily items. Because there's no monetary limit to these money farming actions, it's not very interesting to include them. I could just make as much money as I have the patience for, and I have a fair amount of patience. So any endlessly repeatable money-making actions are off limits. Professor Rowan gives us some free Pokeballs, and we're on our way. We fight the 3 trainers on Route 202 and get some reward money for winning each. In Jubilife, we can pick up some available items and defeat Barry for the second time. My rule is that I'm not allowed to repeat trainer fights, but this second fight with Barry is fair game, since I literally have to in order to make progress. Besides, these fights aren't endlessly repeatable anyway. Up to this point, I've been fighting every trainer and collecting every item, but once I reach Route 203, we have another decision to consider. For the first time, all 5 trainers on this route are optional, meaning I could skip them if I wanted to. It may seem counterintuitive to bypass them and not collect the cash reward, but if I skip them now and come back to fight them later, we can get significantly more money from them. In fact, we want to skip 99% of optional trainers, because we want to fight them with our optimal money-making setup, and we're not there yet. But what about the 1% of optional trainers we shouldn't skip? Well, let's take a look at our next stop, the Orberg Gym. There are 2 trainers here, both of whom can be easily navigated around. However, once you beat the gym leader and collect the badge, those trainers become inaccessible, meaning you aren't ever able to fight them. We would not be able to come back in our optimal money-making state. So if we don't fight them now, it's money lost forever. To make the most money, we need to fight these trainers now. So we do, and easily take out Rourke to get a sweet cash prize and a valuable TM. He also gives me a badge, which is worth $0, but just because an item can't be sold doesn't mean it's worthless. In fact, the Coal Badge gives us the ability to use Rock Smash outside of battle, which is a requirement to make progress in this game. I would have loved to skip the gym completely to make more money off of Rourke later, but this game does a very good job of forcing you to fight the gym leaders in order. HMs become an important consideration, since not all Pokemon can learn all HMs, but all 3 starters can learn Rock Smash, so we didn't need to pick Piplup here to progress. We maneuver around all the optional trainers to make it to Floaroma Town, where Team Galactic is causing trouble. We have a few required grunt fights here to get the Valley Windworks key, where we can skip 2 additional fights to take on Commander Mars. But just like gym trainers become inaccessible once the gym leader is defeated, the grunt fights here also become inaccessible. Once Mars is defeated, Team Galactic heads out, including the grunts that line the hallways. So, to make the most profit, we need to fight every trainer here, and then take on Mars. Commander Mars is a tough fight because of her Purugly, which hits hard due to its fragile self-worth thanks to the unfair beauty standards set by society. Oh, and also its high attack stat. Another reason that Purugly is such a difficult matchup is because it's holding an Oranberry, which heals a significant amount of health this early in the game. Prinplup doesn't really care about all that, it's overleveled and dunks on Purugly pretty easily, but that Oranberry is an item that can be sold. So if we're trying to make as much money as possible, stealing that berry is financially optimal. There are 4 moves in Platinum that can steal items. Switcheroo and Trick switch items between the user and target, while Thief and Covet deal damage in addition to stealing items from the target. Any of these moves work here, and thankfully we do have access to one Pokemon that learns them. On Route 203, we can find Abra, who evolves into Kadabra and learns Trick at level 43. But even though this would allow us to steal the berry, a profitable action, we have to consider the cost. Every time you catch a wild Pokemon, you have to use a Pokeball. Even though using a Pokeball doesn't directly cost money, I'd be choosing to use it on Abra instead of selling it. So even if we used the cheapest ball, a Pokeball, and caught Abra using the first one we threw, we'd be losing $100. Again, from using the ball instead of selling it. The berry we steal from Purugly has a sell price of $10, meaning our net profit from these actions is negative $90. In a vacuum, this would be a net loss. But any subsequent use of the move Trick doesn't cost additional money. Using a Pokeball was a one-time action. So when we're evaluating if catching an Abra is worth it, we need to consider all the items we could steal. Starting in Gym 2, each gym leader's best Pokemon has a berry, except Maylene for some reason. There's even random trainers around Sinnoh that have items. All of these add up to significantly more than the cost of using a Pokeball. And to squeeze even more value out of this, we could instead catch a Machop and trade it to an NPC in Orberg for their Abra Kazaa, who is holding an Oranberry, giving us an extra item. All of this is to say, spending $100 to catch an Abra who can steal way more value in items seems like a no-brainer profitable move. And yet, it's not. In fact, the way we can make the most money in this game is by actively choosing not to steal this item and many of the items coming up. Why is this the case? Well, we'll get into it later. For now, we defeat Mars without taking the berry, and move through Route 205 in the Eterna Forest, only fighting the trainers that are required before making it to Eterna City. We fight the Eterna gym trainers and beat Gardenia once Prinplup evolves into Empoleon, giving it a steel typing and making grass attacks neutral. We do not take the berry from Roserade, but get money and a TM for our victory. The second badge gives us the ability to cut, which Empoleon can learn, giving us access to the Galactic building here. Like the Valley Windworks, we fight all optional grunt fights here since they'll leave, before taking on Jupiter, once again passing up on the berry held by Skuntank. For our trouble, Cynthia gives us a Pokemon egg for free, which we are happy to accept. We also grab a free bike, roll down Cycling Road, and cross through Mount Coronet, only forced to fight one hiker with a nose pass before making it to Hearthome City. There's a few important things to do here that require some planning. Before doing anything else, we want to pop into Amity Square. But to get in, we need a Pokemon that the game considers to be cute. Thankfully, starting in Pokemon Platinum, all starters and their evolutions are considered cute. And, I mean, can you blame them? Nothing says cute quite like this 5'7", 186-pound steel predator bird. I just want to squeeze its cold, pointy cheeks until my fingers bleed. Oh, come here, you precious hunk of deadly metal. By taking my human-sized penguin for a walk, we get access to the most important item in the entire playthrough, the amulet coin. When Empoleon holds this item, we now receive double the money from each trainer battle, significantly increasing our potential profit. We wanted to grab this before defeating the Hearthome gym trainers and Fantina so we could get the extra money from them. Thanks to this item alone, in just one gym of the game, we almost doubled our money. However, even though we do have the amulet coin, we have not reached our optimal money-making state. So, we do still want to avoid optional trainers. We still need one thing before we come back to fight them. Before we leave Hearthome, we can get another free Pokemon, Eevee. We get this one straight up rather than having to hatch it in an egg. So technically, this is our second Pokemon. This is important because on the next route, Route 209, there's a mandatory double battle with twins Emma and Lil. However, if I put Eevee in the box and pass by with just one Pokemon, the game will not trigger the fight, since I technically don't have enough Pokemon to take on a double battle. I can skip every fight here, through Solaceon Town and Route 210, before the game forces me to fight a trainer at the beginning of Route 215 and a double battle just before entering Veilstone City. Here, I can defeat gym trainers and Maylene, pick up a free Porygon, hatch my Togepi egg, and defeat some Galactic grunts, giving me a total of 4 free Pokemon and just shy of $70,000. It's more the same as I traverse to Pastoria, defeat Barry and Crash Her Wake, get the secret potion from Cynthia, and head through the fog to Celestic, where we defeat Cyrus. We get money for our trouble, as we usually do, but this victory gives us the HM for Surf. We immediately teach Surf to Empoleon, because only now can we catch a very important Pokemon for this challenge, and it's almost certainly a Pokemon you would not expect. You see, to make the most money possible in Platinum, you need to catch Mr. Mime. At level 36, Mr. Mime learns Trick, just like Kadabra does. But why is it better to wait for Mr. Mime and miss all the items up to this point? Well, that's because even if we did catch Abra earlier, we'd still need to catch Mr. Mime now. In fact, there's a bunch of Pokemon we need to catch, because in order to make the most money in Pokemon Platinum, we need to complete the Sinnoh Pokedex. To be at our money-making maximum, where we can finally fight every trainer in the game, we need 2 things. First, we need the amulet coin, an item that generates extra money. We have that, so now we're just missing one thing, a Pokemon that learns the move Payday. Payday is an attack that generates money every time it's used. So if we were able to beat trainers holding the amulet coin and using Payday, we'd make as much money as possible. But there's only one Pokemon in Platinum that learns Payday. Meowth. Meowth can be found in the Trophy Garden, which is a location we have access to now. However, Meowth isn't a normal encounter in the Trophy Garden. It's one of the special daily Pokemon. In order for Meowth to be in the daily rotation of special Pokemon, you have to unlock the National Pokedex. Meowth is not in the Sinnoh Pokedex. It literally cannot be encountered during normal gameplay. And in order to unlock the National Pokedex, we need to complete the Sinnoh one. Now, that doesn't mean we need to catch every Pokemon. It means we just need to see every Pokemon. But that actually makes things way more complicated. If I needed to catch every Pokemon, that would just be a matter of finding every wild Pokemon and spending a Pokeball to catch it. But if we just need to see the Pokemon, there's tons of ways to do that. Seeing it in the wild, fighting a trainer that has it, catching it, breeding it, getting it for free, reading about it in a book. There's so many ways to encounter Pokemon. Which means I need to analyze the cheapest way to encounter every single Sinnoh Pokemon. Before this challenge even began, I went through all 210 Pokemon, figuring out how to see each of them for the lowest cost possible. This includes killing all of my teammates' Pokemon so it sends out Monferno and I can register it in the Pokedex. Yes, it requires this level of nuance. We will discuss the crazy things I had to do to make that happen. But for now, just know, catching Mr. Mime instead of Abra is profitable because it helps me complete the Pokedex. In Canalave, we defeat Barry, take out the gym trainers, and defeat Byron, finally able to steal items with Mr. Mime. As a caveat, getting Pokemon to higher levels can be done for free by grinding on wild Pokemon. So to save hours and hours of my time, I just set my Pokemon to the level I want them at. Team Galactic starts to enact their ultimate plan. So it's my job to head to Lake Valor to see what's up. An interesting thing here is that after you defeat Commander Saturn, the Galactic grunts actually don't leave with him and are still available to fight. So for the first time this challenge, we could skip them until we have a Meowth. But unfortunately, by the time we get there, Team Galactic will be long defeated, and the lake will be full of water again, presumably drowning all the grunts that are still here. You'd think they'd be smart enough to leave their post rather than dying a painful water death, but based on the general intelligence of these guys, it's not completely out of the question. The lake filling with water means that any items not picked up here become completely accessible later. So we make sure to pick up the one item, an HP up. Fun fact, this is the only overworld item in the entire game that can be lost forever if you don't pick it up before the end of the game. We can finish up the rest of the galactic plot now. Beat Mars and Verity, trek to Snow Point to defeat Candace and get rock climb, meet up with Barry in Acuity, and take out every grunt and boss in the Veilstone HQ and warehouse since they'll go away. Cyrus is 27? What am I doing with my life? I'm a YouTuber. Before we head through Mount Coronet to Spear Pillar and the Distortion World, there's something we have to do first. One of the fights coming up is a double battle with Mars and Jupiter, where each of their two Pokemon are holding an item. Mr. Mime can only steal one item per fight, unless there was a way we could get more Mr. Mimes. Well, there is. First, you'll notice that the Mr. Mime I caught was female. This was on purpose because I need to breed Mrs. Mime. There are lots of Pokemon that we could catch for breeding, but only one of them is a Pokemon we need to catch anyway for the Sinnoh Pokedex, Bunnyary. By catching a male Bunnyary, evolving it to Lopunny, and breeding it with Mrs. Mime, we can get a bunch of Mr. Mimes, and we can steal both berries from the galactic bosses. In the Distortion World, we defeat Cyrus and run from Giratina since there's no financial reason to catch it. With Team Galactic defeated once and for all, we can close out the final few tasks of the gameplay. Head to Sunyshore, defeat the last gym trainers in Volkner, and make our way through Victory Road, fighting only the required trainers as usual. The last thing we need to do is climb the waterfall in front of the Pokemon League, but Empoleon already knows 4 HMs. Rock Smash, Cut, Surf, and Rock Climb. However, we can use the move deleter to get rid of Cut and teach Waterfall, allowing us to reach the Elite Four. These 5 fights might be the most straightforward part of the challenge. I made sure to get Empoleon to level 100 since I don't want to use any healing items if possible. I can use Empoleon to do the actual work, bringing in Mr. Mime to steal the Citrus Berry off each ace Pokemon. If Mr. Mime gets below half health, it'll consume the berry. So I brought 5 Mr. Mimes, 1 for each fight, so I never have to worry about HP. I beat the champion with the stupidest team, but hey man, this is just what peak profit looks like. Now that the Pokemon League is defeated and I'm the new champion, I venture to Sand Gem Town to meet with Professor Rowan. He asks to see my progress on the Pokedex and notes that I've seen 180 Pokemon. This means I have to find the final 30 Pokemon, and I have to do it as cheap as possible. Let's analyze how to do this. Many of the Pokemon I've already found have been wild Pokemon that I ran into over the course of my regular gameplay, but there's many wild Pokemon that I haven't had the chance to encounter yet. Let's start with the legendaries that are now available. I can find the lake legendaries at each of the lakes. I can also go to the Pokemon Mansion to read about Manaphy, which enters the mythical into your Pokedex. Although it's not legendary and it's been available for a while, I never got around to encountering the Rotom in the old chateau. Note that it's not necessary to catch these Pokemon, simply seeing them and fleeing is sufficient. So, I can add 5 more Pokemon to my Pokedex without spending any money. There was also no reason for me to travel on the routes below Sand Gem Town in a normal playthrough, but I can find 2 more Pokemon here. Luminion as a rare Good Rod encounter, and Sudowoodo deep into Route 221. This adds 2 more to the total, bringing us to 187. Additionally, we have some rare wild Pokemon we can hunt for. Dustox can only be found as a wild Pokemon one place. The Eterna Forest as a 1% encounter. Understandably, I didn't come across one during my short trip through the forest, so after a bit of searching, one appears. The real trouble is Phoebus, who's only found on 4 random tiles of this giant lake in Mount Coronet, meaning to make optimal money in Platinum, I do have to do the Phoebus hunt. However, thanks to some crafty Pokemon enthusiasts, it's pretty easy to figure out which tiles are Phoebus tiles. This brings our total to 189, but that's all the free wild Pokemon we can encounter. Combee is a Pokemon that no mandatory trainers had, so I still haven't seen one. But the only way to find a wild one is to slather a honey tree. which uses a $50 honey. But this is just the price of finishing the Pokedex. It turns out, even without the Pokedex of it all, slathering the honey is still profitable. There's an NPC in Pastoria who wants to see a male and female Combee, and will give you a macho brace if you show them. This action costs me $300 to complete, $100 for using 2 honeys, and $200 for using 2 Pokeballs. But the macho brace can be sold for $1,500, a profit of $1,200. That's obviously worth it, and also brings our Pokedex total to 190. There are 5 more Pokemon that can be found in the wild, but all cost a significant amount of money to encounter. These are Pokemon only available at the Great Marsh, Sinnoh's version of the Safari Zone. Entrance to the marsh costs $500. So, is this the most profitable way to see these Pokemon? Well, there are many items in the Great Marsh, which in total can be sold for way more than the $500 entrance fee. So, spending the $500 to enter is the right call, and we can see the Pokemon while we're there. But this begs the question, can you do everything you need to do in one Great Marsh trip? The way this place works is you pay $500 and receive 30 Safari Balls, but only get 500 steps in the marsh. The balls don't mean anything for us in this challenge. Our goal is to see the 5 Pokemon missing from our Pokedex and collect every item. 3 of the Pokemon are always available, Wooper, Tangela, and Yanma. But the Great Marsh also has rotating Pokemon that are only found on certain days, including Carnivine and Skorupi. Thankfully, it's not just one Pokemon per day, so there is a chance to get both Carnivine and Skorupi on the same day. The only way you can confirm what daily Pokemon are available is by looking at the binoculars upstairs from the entrance. Unfortunately, this costs $100 to check, but I can just pay for it, gain the information, and reset the game, armed with the knowledge but not having to pay the price. Now, it's just a matter of making sure I can do everything in one trip. Based on where the items are located, I map out what I think is the most efficient path, making sure to pass through tall grass to snag encounters. My pathing pays off, and I am able to grab every item and see all 5 Pokemon in one trip, with about 25 steps to spare. We are now at 195 Pokedex entries, but the final 15 Pokemon cannot be found in the wild. Instead, the game intends for you to see these Pokemon by fighting all the trainers in the game. In fact, all 210 are owned by at least one trainer in the game, minus the legendaries. The game knows it's going to require you to see every Pokemon, so it wants to make the task fairly easy. But we don't care about what's easy, we care about what's profitable. We could absolutely fight those trainers now and cruise to a completed Pokedex, but we'd be doing so without Meowth and Payday and lose out on thousands of dollars. There has to be a better way. Let's use Licky Licky as an example, one of the 15 Pokemon we're missing. We could fight Veteran Clayton to register Licky Licky, missing out on thousands of dollars from using Payday. Or we could catch a Lickitung on Route 215, spending only $100 by using a Pokeball, and evolving Lickitung into Licky Licky at level 33 for free. The evolution method is way less money. This is exactly why we caught Bunnyary, opting to evolve it rather than lose money on an optional fight, since Lopunny is not a Pokemon we run into through normal gameplay. We just did it earlier for breeding purposes. If I can find a way to avoid fighting a trainer with a missing Pokedex entry, that's almost certainly going to be the best option. This is also the cheaper method to encounter Probopass, Ambipom, and Wormadam. For the latter two, Apom and Burmy can only be encountered via honey trees, so they cost an extra $50 to use a honey, but $150 is still way cheaper than an optional trainer fight. This gives us a total of $199, just 11 more to go. In addition to Pokemon where we need to find the evolution, there are many Pokemon where we need to find the pre-evolution, and the cheapest way to get them is through breeding. This is why we needed to catch Mr. Mime, because we needed to breed it with the Odd Incense to register Mime Jr. in the Pokedex. There are 4 more baby Pokemon we need to get this way: Elekid, Magby, Happiny, and Bonsly. By going out and catching female versions of their evolutions, we can hatch a bunch of baby Pokemon eggs. But breeding Pokemon is costly, sometimes thousands of dollars. So, is this actually a good value? Well, breeding Pokemon itself actually doesn't cost anything. When we put Mrs. Mime and Lopunny in the daycare and they started giving me Little Mime Juniors, I wasn't actually paying anything. It's only when you take the Pokemon out that you have a cost. And that cost is $100 plus $100 for each level your Pokemon gains. So, by making sure both Mrs. Mime and Lopunny were level 100, I only need to pay $100 to take each Pokemon out. And again, that's significantly cheaper than fighting optional trainers. I come up with a breeding plan to make sure I'm minimizing the taking in and pulling out of Pokemon. That was the worst way I could phrase that. And all Pokemon coming in, nope. And all Pokemon being put in the daycare are level 100. With the 4 baby Pokemon, we're at 203 Pokedex entries. We have a situation that involves both evolving and breeding, and those are evolutions. I've seen 3 evolutions already: Jolteon on Volkner's team, Flareon on Flint's team, and Espeon on Lucian's team. But the 4 remaining evolutions were on optional fights rather than mandatory ones. So, like usual, it's cheaper for us to obtain them ourselves. We do have the gift Eevee, but we need to breed 3 more to get all 4 missing evolutions. This is why I reset to make sure I was given a female Eevee. Once the Eevee eggs are generated, the Umbreon, Leafeon, and Glaceon evolutions all cost no money. You just need to level up Eevee at night or buy specific locations. The final evolution is Vaporeon, and this one does cost money. A lot of money. An unused water stone can be sold for $1,050, but this is still cheaper than fighting an optional fight. That's just how unbelievable Payday is. The fact that we needed to get Vaporeon is why our starter selection doesn't matter. We could have gone with Turtwig or Chimchar and then evolved to Vaporeon early as our Surfer. With the rest of the evolutions, we hit 207 Pokedex entries. Only 3 to go. One of the 3 remaining Pokemon is Gengar. Gengar is a trait evolution, meaning even if I caught an evolved Haunter, I would not be able to get Gengar. There's literally no way for me to obtain this Pokemon. This means I have to fight a trainer with Gengar. There's no other choice. Psychic Bryce in Victory Road has a Gengar. Awesome. But what else does Psychic Bryce have? A Gardevoir. One of the other 3 Pokemon I haven't seen yet. Sure, I could catch a Ralts and evolve it, but I have to fight Psychic Bryce anyway, so I can add Gardevoir to the Pokedex for no additional cost. That leaves just 1 Pokemon I haven't found. And as crazy as it sounds, that Pokemon is Riolu. I know that Riolu is a free Pokemon you can get in this game. So why on earth is Riolu the last Pokemon for me to see? Well, like many of the decisions I make in this challenge, it's not about the cost of the action, but the cost of the events that lead up to the action. Yeah, the Riolu we get from Riley on Iron Island is free, but it's given at the culmination of that side quest, after defeating 4 trainers. If I skip Iron Island completely to come back with Payday Meowth, I can make so much more money. And despite being a plot with Team Galactic, these grunts are still here, even after you defeat Cyrus. Poor guys are so deep into a cave nobody told them they lost weeks ago. Unfortunately, this is the only way to get Riolu, and there are no wild Lucarios, so you can't even breed one. That means we need to fight Veteran Grant in the Orberg Gate to register Riolu. Fighting 1 trainer now is better than fighting 4 trainers now. Finally, after so much planning and praying I didn't mess up that planning hours and hours into a playthrough, we have seen all 210 Pokemon in the Sinnoh Pokedex. And finally, we receive the National Pokedex. This means we can go to the Trophy Garden to catch Meowth. And I can actually use my Master Ball here. The Master Ball can't be sold. Technically, it's a priceless item, or as I like to say, a worthless item. Using it here is saving more money than using a Pokeball would. Finally, we have reached our money-making maximum. So now I can go back through the entire game, fighting every single trainer I skipped and making sure to collect every single item. With Payday and the Amulet coin, every time I use the move, I gain $1,000, which is so much money, and why waiting to fight these trainers now is financially the move. I got Meowth to level 100 to make this amount of money, and I didn't use Payday to do so. Using the move on wild Pokemon would be a limitless money-making action. I'm just beating all the trainers one time, I just happen to be using Payday to do it. If you think this is a lot of money from battles, just wait until we start taking on double battles. For this, it actually makes sense to breed 6 Meowths and send all of them in to take on double battles. Not only can I have 2 Paydayers attacking, but I can now choose my target, which means I don't necessarily have to target my opponent. I can spend the double battle attacking my other Pokemon constantly with Payday, going through as many Meowths as possible before eventually taking out my opponent. I can make a couple thousand from regular battles, but double battles make a little bit more. The amulet coin comes in clutch here, because I don't need 6 of them. As long as 1 amulet coin enters the battle, it multiplies all the paydays used from any of the Meowths. I know this may seem kinda gimmicky, but hey, I'm just really bad at doing these battles. Oops. Oh man. The money is ramping up at an extraordinary pace, which means very quickly through this process, I hit the limit on the money I'm able to carry. You see, there is a cap to how much money I can hold, just shy of $1 million. If I hit this limit and then gain more money, the game has nowhere to store it, so it just vanishes. This would be my worst case scenario. But what can I do? It's not like I can change how much money I can hold. Although it's true that I can't hold more cash, I can hold additional value through items. As I've been collecting items, I haven't been selling them because I knew I was gonna hit the money cap. Items hold their sell value without actually needing to convert that value to cash. So if I convert my cash into items, I can free up space to hold more cash while still holding value in my items. The trick is to find a way to retain as much value as possible. Ideally, we'd find an item where the cost is the same as the sell value. If we bought something for, say, $100 and sold it back for that same $100, we'd retain all the value. But that's not how items work in Pokemon. All items in Pokemon have a sell value of half. So something that costs $100 could only be sold back for $50. But are there any items that don't follow this trend? Well, there isn't a shop that sells items for a discount like there is in Emerald or Heart Gold Soul Silver. In fact, there is no item with anything other than a 50% sell value. This is still better than gaining no money if we hit the limit, but we do have a couple tricks up our sleeve. At the Veilstone department store, everything you can buy sells for half the value, including the drinks you can get from the vending machine. You buy a fresh water for $200 and sell it back for $100. However, every time you buy a drink, there is a 1 in 64 chance that you get a second drink for free, meaning you spend $200 to get 2 waters with a total sell value of $200. Retaining 100% of your value. Of course, there's a less than 2% chance of this happening, but theoretically, you could just reset until you get the free drink every single time. I'm not even gonna try to pretend that I actually spent the time doing this. I'm just gonna assume that I always get the free drink. This is an exploration into what's theoretically possible in this game. So we always assume the beneficial action happens, assuming it's a reasonable likelihood. With cash moved into drinks in my inventory, I can continue collecting prize money from all the trainers. And I mean a lot of prize money. So much that I actually capped the total possible amount to get this hexadecimal number instead of a multiple of 1,000. Today, we all learned that there is actually a limit to this. Pretty cool. Speaking of limits, there is another limitation we have to be aware of. In Gen 4, there is a limit to the number of a singular item you're allowed to have. 999. That means we can't do the vending machine thing endlessly. Eventually, we'll max out of the number of fresh waters, soda pops, and lemonades we can carry. And because I'm actually physically getting 2 drinks when I buy one, we hit that limit twice as fast. I only bought 499, but have 998. There is a way to squeeze a little extra juice out of this, so to speak. When I was breeding EVs, I ended up breeding a few extra EVs. Well, a lot of extra EVs. Okay, 510 extra EVs. By giving a held lemonade to all 540 Pokemon I can hold in the box, plus 5 Pokemon in my party, remember, a Meowth needs to hold the amulet coin, I get a bit more wiggle room in my cash. I can keep making my way through the areas in the game, which is always a joy without being able to use repels. Across Sinnoh, there are a few items where we need to analyze if they're worth getting. For example, there's an NPC in Orberg who will give you a heal ball if you show him a Geodude. Heal balls sell for $150, and Pokeballs sell for $100. So, you can make $50 by essentially trading a Pokeball to catch a Geodude for the gift heal ball. On the flip side, there are a few in-game trades where you can receive a Pokemon holding an item. However, none of these Pokemon are ones I caught already, and they're all holding $10 berries, or a $100 Everstone. So, it would not be worth a $100 Pokeball to catch them. These are the rare times where obtaining the item isn't worth it. Additionally, you gain access to a rare candy if you show the Ruin Maniac 26 different types of unknown, or at least that's what he says. In reality, you don't need to catch any unknown at all. Just encounter all 26 letters. Once you do that, you can pick up the rare candy without spending any money at all. We continue to fight trainers, but we're approaching the $1 million threshold again. Though we're out of space for the vending machine trick, there is still one thing we can do to get a better value on items than 50%. If you buy 10 or more Pokeballs, Pokemarts will give you a free item, a Premier Ball. It's not much, but it is slightly better value than the other items. I make sure to only buy 10 Pokeballs at a time to maximize the amount of Premier Balls I get. As I go through the remaining few areas, I realize there are a few locations where I still need to partner up with an NPC, specifically Iron Island with Riley, Wayward Cave with Mira, Victory Road with Marley, and Stark Mountain with Buck. Each of these locations are filled with double battles. And as I stated earlier, these are huge money-generating events. However, completing these double battles with a partner significantly lowers the money I can make. There's only me using Payday, and if I attack my partner enough, it'll die, and I have no choice but to attack my opponent. So, I only want to complete the double battles with my partner that are absolutely necessary. With all of this money coming in, not only have I maxed out my vending machine drinks, but I've also maxed out the Pokeballs I can hold in my bag. With the free Premier Ball strategy now unavailable, I have officially run out of ways to make more than a 50% value by buying items. So now I just buy any item for a 50% return in value. I venture to all the locations in the entire game, including the areas on the island up north. In the resort area, you're gifted an entire villa for some reason, which I would love to include in my net worth. However, it doesn't seem possible for me to sell it, so technically its value to me is nothing. But I think we all know that's not realistic. The last thing I need to do is fight Pokemon Center trainers. These trainers appear on certain days across Sinnoh Pokemon Centers, and increase in strength as you progress through the game. They also increase in the money they give you for winning. Since I can only fight each trainer once, I want to fight them at their absolute strongest, and therefore most generous. However, even though I went through the entire game and did all the plot-relevant events, I cannot get these trainers to fight me with their strongest teams. For whatever reason, they all fight me with their second strongest teams, and I can't find anything online about what needs to trigger to get the teams to change. If I had to guess, it's probably completing the National Pokedex, but I am not doing that. You literally can't make me. If you know how to get this to happen, let me know in the comments. That'd be really helpful for me. With that, all trainers in the game have been defeated, and all profitable items have been collected. We can now tally up the value of our cash and items, including the thousands of drinks and Pokeballs we have. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, I made 2.1 million. Emerald, 2.5 million. Heart Gold, Soul Silver, we got 3.4 million. And the upward trend continues. In Platinum, I was able to make $3,990,210. I don't know if the games are actually more profitable or if I'm just better at making money. I will say, this game felt like inherently it was harder to make money. There were no bargain shops, no mom to hold $1 million for you, and you don't get Meowth until after the Elite Four. This game made so much money because there are so many double battles, and I could make like $50,000 off of each one. I think the lesson to be learned here is if you put in the time, work really hard, and do all the analysis, you can be really, really proud of the wealth that you get. Or you could get some magic cats and have them attack each other.